This video, as you probably guessed from the title, is going to be in two parts. The first part, I'm going to look at a local ghost story I found online recently that I've never heard before in my life, and now I know there's reason why. And the second part, after I left the cemetery, I decided to run up the road to the battlefield where the Battle of Richmond took place, just to get some shots outside of the house and that kind of thing. And that trip didn't go as I expected, as you're going to see. So the story about Pilot Knob Cemetery comes up in an article on this website about 10 urban legends in Kentucky. They're listed backwards from 10 to 1, which makes it seem like they would be, it's a ranking, you know, the last one's the scariest or something like that, but I don't know if that was intentional. The whole thing's kind of a mess. So I'm going to read you a little bit about the story. So I'm going to read you just a little bit from this article about the story that supposedly is true. So I'm going to read you just a little bit from the article of the story about Pilot Knob Cemetery and what it says. Then I'm going to read you a little bit more of something else that kind of ties all this together, makes it not make sense. This is exactly how it starts. Near the child witch's graveside, another dark spirit looms known as the Pilot Knob Watcher. This presence encourages a quickened pace and makes the hair on the back of the neck stand up. It seems to loom around the child's iron prison, making its presence known to those who go there after dark. I have never heard of a child witch's grave at Pilot Knob Cemetery, and pretty sure nobody else around here has either. Pilot Knob Cemetery is a very well-known cemetery. If you live down here on this end of the county and have grown up here, lived here for any period of time, you probably know somebody who's buried out there. It's not like an abandoned cemetery out in the woods. I'm going to show you that here in a few minutes. So the picture that goes with this story is a sign that's used to be out at Pilot Knob Cemetery here. Seen the sign, it was there for years. You know, I showed the picture, everybody was like, yeah, I remember that sign being there. It's been replaced. The new sign is in pretty much the exact same spot. Now, like I said, this was number 2 on this list. Let me read number 1 on this list. In the late 1900s, small town folk could be the worst. In the rural county of Marion lies a small town called Pilot Knob. In the 1900s, a woman and her 6-year-old daughter were accused of witchcraft, but their trial was foregone. Instead, the town folks burned them both at the stake. They feared the repercussions of their judgment and took precautions to prevent the child from returning. The child lays in a still-lined grave, but dirt was replaced with concrete and gravel. They then put an interconnecting cross fence around the grave so that the spirit would be trapped within the borders. This is about a place called Pilot Knob in Marion County, which I don't know where that is, to be honest with you. Now, if you take these two articles together, take the first one, put the second one under it, read them together. So to me, what has happened here is the woman who wrote this has gotten confused, and she has used a picture of Pilot Knob Cemetery here to go with an article about a Pilot Knob Cemetery in Marion County, wherever that is. That's where the confusion has come from. So now let's go out to the cemetery and take a look firsthand. First, this is the picture of the cemetery sign that was in this article that has really caused all the confusion. The article was written in 2015, so I'm going to assume that this picture was taken then as well, because like I said, it's been replaced. There are 3 things I want you to pay attention to when I transition to the new sign here in just a second. First is the dead tree behind the sign on the left. You can see it's still there. It wasn't dead. The picture was taken in winter. It didn't have leaves on it. Number 2 is the evergreen tree on the behind the sign on the right side. And you can see it's the same tree and it's gotten taller. The third thing is the hill on the far right. You can see the same hill curved in the background. Now I'm out here at the cemetery, and this is a newer sign than what's in that article, but you can see the pine tree back behind it, or whatever kind of tree that is, matches up. So this is definitely the cemetery she's talking about in the article, if her picture matches. Now, I'm not going to wander around too far because one thing with cemeteries is I don't like showing names on graves, especially like the newer graves that people are still around, because that's just kind of disrespectful. So we're not going to go too far over into the cemetery. You can see past the porta potty down there, there's the lake. I fished in it a couple times when I was younger. Now these are older graves, and what's really weird is in her article she talks about a child's witch grave. I don't know of anything like that out here. Now in these older graves, when I was little, I think it was this bunch right here, had a big, thick cast iron fence around it. And we always told stories about, you know, why it had that fence around it. We were kids, we're making stuff up. The fence has been gone for a long time. I'll tell you a little story since I'm out here. This little dip right here used to be what everybody called the dump pile. And, you know, way out in the country, the cemeteries a lot of times didn't have garbage pickup. When I was growing up, a lot of houses didn't have garbage pickup. So everybody had a burn barrel or a burn pile or a dump pile. And the dump pile here at the cemetery is where all the leftover artificial flowers and stuff like that were dumped when they weren't used no more. And we would come out for decoration day, everybody on mom's side of the family, because this is where they're all buried at. And we would play in the dump pile, usually until we saw a snake, and that would run us to the other end of the cemetery where we'd have to go peek in the hole of the outhouse that used to be out here. And sometimes, if people were still putting their flower arrangements together while we were out here at the cemetery, they would send us to the dump pile. Go look for me a piece of styrofoam, or go look for this, go look for that. Now, in the story that's online, it talks about how people who come out here at night, she does emphasize at night, say they're being watched by the Pilot Knob Watcher. Now, I'm going to tell you, as long as I've lived here, as many family as I have buried here, and as many families I have living right around the corner from here, I've never heard that before in my life. Never, not once, nothing. Now, I have had people say, you know, sometimes when they're out here at the cemetery, they feel like somebody's watching them. And to me, that's pretty much any cemetery you go to. There's always kind of a feeling like somebody's watching you, and probably a good chance somebody is. So I'm at the Richmond battlefield, which is where, guess what? The Battle of Richmond took place. This is Richmond, Kentucky, not Virginia. And the battle really didn't take place in Richmond. It took place between Berea and Richmond in a place called Kingston. The Battle of Richmond was one of the only Confederate victories in Kentucky during the war, and one of the most decisive, because they won big time here. And as you may or may not know, Kentucky was the only state at the time to have its capital occupied by the opposing force. The Confederates controlled Frankfort at one point. And this is the only slave quarters left out here from the time period. Now we're going to look at the house here in a minute. We'll see what these people on the porch have to say about it. They keep staring at me, but I can stare back. So I'm now in front of the house, which is called Pleasant View. And funny thing, as I walked up to the house, the two women that were staring at me happened to be friends of mine, one of whom now works here. Who knows? So we have spent the last probably hour talking about things, as we hadn't seen each other in a long time. But the house is closed right now to the public, but it is opening back up next Wednesday. And my friend Janet, who works here, has told me to come back. So next Wednesday, you will get the full story from somebody who really knows it about the Battle of Richmond and the Pleasant View house. I'm pretty excited about that. I almost didn't come out here today. It was just kind of a random thought, and You never really know. Sometimes, do you? Look at these doors. So probably next Thursday, that would be June 16th, is when I'll have that video posted. Look at that view. Now the mountain on the left, I have always heard it referred to as Joe's Lick Knob. Lick as in Salt Lick. And on the right is Indian Fork Mountain. So for now, that's it from the Richmond battlefield. And you all always know I appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe. And I'll see you later.